Uh, Going live. Oh God. Oh God, I'm late. Hello, my friends. Wait, did this thing go? It takes a second. You have to watch it, and I think it goes live before it actually shows me the live. So that's weird. Hurry up now. Hurry up. Excuse me. Okay. All right. Now it's showing me the okay. So anyway, welcome back to our Quaranreads Sunday meeting. We are discussing our next book this week, which was Pachinko by Minjin Lee. So there's the cover. Pachinko! It's a good book. I'm going to share this guy to Facebook so that we can know what's happening here. And where we will discuss Pachinko. Pachinko, in terms of things that we've read in the past, it's very similar to The Vanishing Half, like in that, like it's a generation spanning story about a family. I guess like the main part is that it's about which girl is it about? Yeah, it's about Sunja, and I'm assuming her name is pronounced Sunja, just based on my understanding of Korean. But so there's a Korean family. They live in South Korea, and this is during the time when Japan occupied Korea. So it's like the not quite the 20s yet. I don't know. It's the 20s. I don't know. But it's anyway. So Korea is being occupied by Japan, and this young lady named Sunja is the daughter of a family who runs the boarding house, like a boarding house in Busan, right? And Busan, if you don't know how Korea is, it's like at the very south, and I believe it's an island off the coast of the very south of the Korean peninsula. So Korea is like a peninsula, and there's like China here, and then there's a peninsula, and in today's terms there would be like North Korea, and then like the militarized zone, and then South Korea. And so Busan is at the very bottom. And so her mother runs the boarding house now because her father has passed away when she was a teenager, when she was a younger teenager. I think she's like 17 at this point in the book. And I am just not supposed to do this. Post to Facebook, because that's how we do. Anyway, so Sunja, she is like a young teenager, like 17, and she lives with her mother at the boarding house, where like basically like men who are fishermen and things go to stay, because like everyone's very poor at this particular point in time. And this is like around the time where people are just poor in general, around the world, because like of the depression happening. And so I think this must be the 30s then. It starts like earlier because it also talks about her mom's relationship with her dad. Okay, having a little bit of technical difficulty because I'm looking at the book. I had a date on one of them. Maybe it was 5. Anyway, so she lives with her mom, and they run the boarding house. And kind of like before, like in the summer, she meets this guy. He's like a much older guy, And like I'm a little confused about how old he is because someone described him as 37 and then someone else described him as 34. But at any rate, she meets this man who's like way older than her. And like too old for her, really. But like in the context of the book, not necessarily because it's a different time and like really teenage girls get married to men in this world. Like, that is how things used to be. A girl would become like 16 and she would be marriageable, sometimes even younger than that, 14, 15, 16. She would be considered marriageable. Basically, I think it's like puberty, like whenever the girl rightly goes through puberty, they're like, oh well, she can be married off. And then often she's not married off to a man who is similar in age to her, like someone who's 16 or 17, but is usually married off to a man who is like much older, like an older guy who would be then, looking for a wife, somebody who has established himself some. And that's not just in like Korean culture, but like in like most cultures back in the day, it would basically be the woman was marriageable when she was 14 or 15. So Sunja is marriageable, and so it's not necessarily bad that this man is in his 30s and interested in her. But the guy kind of tricks her into like seeing him like on the down low. So like, he'll go like meet her by the beach or like take her into the woods or whatever. And they end up like having sex and things because she has no like concept of it. Like so she being so young and of course like being a girl, she has no concept of like what men and women can do together. So to her, she's giving this man what he wants, but she thinks that he's going to marry her. And she ends up becoming pregnant. And of course, he's not going to marry her. He reveals that back in Japan, he has a wife and 3 daughters. And he was offering to take care of her, and he was like very excited that she was pregnant, but she was never going to be married to him. And of course, back then, if a girl was like not married and then pregnant, it didn't matter if the man was taking care of her, like she was still like disgraced. It was like not a good thing to like be married. I mean, to like be unmarried and have a kid. So, of course, that's what Sunja's thinking. Like, you ruined my life. So she like tells him, I'm never gonna see you again. I don't want to see you. Like, this is horrible. We're not doing that. So like that's like the backstory to that. And I guess like talking about her parents, her mom was like, I guess her dad's family owned the boarding house. They didn't really own it. Like they have a landlord who they pay. But her dad, who's Huni, he was born with a cleft palate and a club foot. So being like disabled was like not necessarily a great thing. Like as you can imagine, um, just in general in the world, how people treat disabled people, even now. Um, Imagine how it would have been like back in a time where, and this was like 100 years ago, but like, like in a time where people didn't necessarily respect or like think people with disabilities were like worth anything. And even though like intellectually he was fine, like his brain worked fine, just the fact that he had a visible disability on his face that also like affected his speech, you know, he wasn't necessarily thought of as like somebody that would be successful or like whatever. But because like he was like the only surviving son in his family, his family, his parents treated him like really well. They allowed him to get education up to a point, which was a big deal. And so he was able to read and write, and he was able to do math. And so that's, you know, what he did for the boarding house. He like wrote down the ledgers and did all the math and stuff. And when he was like in his 20s, you know, his parents had never really like thought of him as like someone that was going to get married, so they didn't like try like in this particular culture they would do like the matchmaker thing, where like you would go to the matchmaker and she would find the correct type of bride for the type of groom who was looking. And yeah, so his family never pursued that because they didn't think he was going to be a marriageable guy because he was disabled, and like a lot of people wouldn't want to marry their daughter off to someone like that, for various reasons, but like one being that like the fear that they're going to pass those like disabilities down to the child. And so he didn't really like his family wasn't really looking, so they were like not going to do it at all. But the matchmaker came to them and was like, hey, like there's this girl, the family doesn't have much, she's very poor, they just kind of want to marry her off, and there wouldn't even be much of a bride price, of course there's no dowry, blah 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 blah. And so it ended up being Sunja's mom, who I think is Yongjin. Let me look. Youngjin, yeah. Youngjin is the young girl that he married, and she's like 15 or something. And so they got married. They didn't really even like know each other. They just got married, and they ended up really liking each other and like being a good couple and everything. But every time they would have a baby, the baby would end up dying. A couple of the babies ended up having the cleft palate, and they didn't survive very long. And if you can imagine, like nowadays, people that are born with cleft palates often have surgery to fix it. Not all the time. Like some people's families either can't afford it, or um, some people just didn't get it fixed for whatever reason. But like often people who are born with a cleft palate now get it fixed. Um, like Joaquin Phoenix was born with a cleft palate, and like he got it fixed, which is why he famously has like the like scarred lip. Um, but like back in the day, before like that surgery was very common, people like children could die just because of that, because it's like exposed and very prone to like infection and things of that nature. And so their babies kept dying, which is also why like kids in developing countries that have it sometimes like they're at a lot of risk, and like charities focus on like getting them surgeries to fix it. So anyway, it's like not a it's not something that would have been that was necessarily easy back then, just because it can lead to so many things. But their children kept dying. And then finally, they had a daughter who is Sunja. And she was not born with a cleft palate, and she actually survived. And like they didn't even like calm down until she was like 2, because they were just like, all of our babies like died before they reached their first birthdays, and some of them before they reached their first 100 days, which 100 days celebration is a big thing in Korea. Um, it's like once the child is 100 days old, then like the family would celebrate, because I guess like it was like a milestone that kind of suggested that your child was going to survive. A lot of cultures have something similar, because babies would die so often back in the day, like years ago and years ago, like babies would die so often that like reaching the first 100 days or the first year was a big milestone. So like a lot of cultures have a similar thing. But yeah, I know in South Korea, the 100-day celebration is like a big thing. even to this day. So like a baby will usually have their 100-day ceremony, and they put like the toys that the baby can like crawl to and choose, and like that's supposed to like say what the baby's fate is. I know a bit about Korean culture because of like I had a lot of interest in Korean culture for a while. So yeah. Anyway, um, so they had Sunja, and they were very like happy because she like survived, and clearly she like completely survived. She grew up, and now she is experiencing a pregnancy. And so um yeah, so the situation with the guy that she met, whose name is Isek, I think. Like it's his name is like a Koreanized version of Isaac. No, no, no. That's the pastor, I think. Oh, so she meets this guy who is like um this like fish the guy that gets her pregnant is like this like fish broker. So that's why he's got so much money. Like he just buys the fish from the fishermen and like makes sure it's going where it's gonna go. Like at this point, like a lot of it goes to Japan. And he's Korean, but he lives in Osaka with his wife and kids. And then he comes to Korea to like buy the fish and stuff. And yeah, so she kind of falls for him because he like saves her. And like it's a bad situation. So anyway, this preacher comes to the boarding house months later when it's winter time, and of course Sunja is pregnant, and then Youngjin knows that Suja is pregnant, but like no one else knows. So of course that's something that the family is like, let's like keep under wraps, right? Because nobody would want everybody to know that their child was like just randomly pregnant, right? And so this preacher, this young, like handsome, tall preacher comes, but he's very sick. And like, so he has, they assume he has tuberculosis because he's been like coughing up blood. And tuberculosis is the same thing that killed Huni, or Sunja's father, Youngjin's husband. And like, but he's very handsome, and his name is Isek, which is like a Koreanized version of Isaac because he's Christian, and his brother's name is Yosep, which is a Koreanized version of Joseph. And so he was planning to stay with them for a month and then head to Japan to meet his brother who lives in Japan. Um, but he falls ill. And so what we know, like that's as far as I read so far, but what we know is that um, Sunja ends up going with him to Japan. But let me open this up to our. Oops, what happened? It got weird for a second. Let me open this up to our friends. I'm going to put the invitation into the thing. Oh, whoa. Something bad happened? Okay, I don't know. I can't tell. Um, let's see. Okay, some kind of technical difficulty, but I hope it's not actually messing up the actual the actual stream. Um, so that said, I'm gonna go ahead and put the thing in the thing so that we can do the thing. Oh my god! I hope that wasn't. I hope it didn't cut out because it looked like it cut out. Oof. I also like may have done that because I clicked something, but we're gonna hope and pray that it's fine. Okay, it's doing something weird. Anyway, I'm gonna open this up so that we can like have a little chit chat about it. I hope you guys have gotten a chance to start the book. It is Pachinko. It is like a relatively thick book, so What I think we'll do is we'll read this book for a while. Like I think we'll take like a month to read it. Um, shouldn't need more than a month. Look at it. It's thick, but it's not that bad. And like also I read mad slow because I didn't get this book till like Wednesday, and then I read like the first like little section, and then I was like, well, these sections are like mad short, so I'm gonna read a bunch of them. And so I'm on like 7 or 8. So yeah, they're like little short sections, but it appears to be like separated into three, count them, three like books. So it's like book one. So what I'm on is book one. Um, and from what I can tell by just like flipping through, it goes up until like the 80s, the 1980s. So that's a very like um, long and drawn out like family history, and also like it seems to be sort of like telling telling this family story, like telling the story of like Korea before Japan like intervened, then Korea under Japanese rule, and then the Korean War, which is when the North and South split. So like the US gets involved then, and then like the two Koreas under the two dictatorships. So North Korea has their dictator, South Korea has their dictator. And then 1980s is kind of when South Korea becomes like the democracy that we know today. Both Koreas kind of claim to be a democracy, but the reality is like nobody can vote against Kim Jong Un. Like it's just not a thing. It's like so Kim Jong Un is eternal president, and then his child would be eternal president unless something changes. Um, but yeah, South Korea used to have the same type of structure where they had sort of a dictator. Um, but the 80s kind of changed that. And the main thing that changed that, okay, there's two things happening with South Korea. One, even though South Korea had a similar type of almost dictatorship, I would say like dictatorship. Um, and the reason I would say that is because their one of their recent presidents, I think it's the one who everybody protested for to like get her out of office. I think she was the daughter of the former dictator. But yeah, so the US was involved with South Korea this whole time. And like North Korea is like China. So it's like North Korea is supported by China, South Korea is supported by the US. And so even though South Korea was sort of closed, it was still like treated better because like the connection to the US. And so South Korea got the Olympics, and the Olympics that happened in the 80s, I think it was 88, I'm not sure, but the Olympics that happened in the 80s are what kind of like was the catalyst to turning South Korea into like more of a dictatorship. Oh, the link isn't popping up. Oh, shoot, shoot, shoot. I don't know what happened. Something weird. Okay, I'm gonna try this one more time. So like Mel just messaged me and said that the link is not popping up. So I think something happened to my internet connection just a second ago. So I'm just gonna try to post this one more time. Let's see. Posting, it says. Um, okay. Let's see. Yeah, it should be posted now. I don't know what happened. Anyway. Yeah. So the Olympics is kind of the catalyst to why South Korea became like an open democratic country that it is to get today. And they have like real elections. It's not fake like dictatorship elections. Um, but yeah, that's interesting. So it seems to kind of be telling that story in the background, because like this looks like book three looks like it ends in the 80s, which would be like with whatever the great great granddaughter or whatever. But we'll see. letting Mel in now. That was weird. Hi.
Hi.
That was weird. I don't know what happened. There was like a little moment where like everything got wonky and then
Yeah.
nothing worked.
Oh, I don't know what happened there, but I don't know. It posted for me now, so it
That's
seems like
good.
it worked.
I don't know. So anyway, yeah, it's an interesting book. Like I'm enjoying it. Have you gotten a chance to read some of it?
Yeah, I'm about at that spot. I think I might actually be slightly further.
Yeah.
I'm like where they're introducing the brother, waiting at the train station for them to get there.
Right. Yeah, that's a little bit ahead of where I am.
So,
Um yeah, I was like, I'm gonna read to like page 100, and then I just was like, didn't get there, but that's okay.
yeah, it's kind of a fast read once it gets going.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
It's very interesting. And
Yeah.
so that like helps because I feel engaged the entire time. I never feel like boring. I want to know what's happening next. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I get very invested in these characters.
yeah,
Yeah.
I like it. It kind of reminds me of The Vanishing Half in that like kind of like epic family thing that like spans all these
Yes.
years and
Yes.
generations. But of course, like the cultures are completely different. You know, one is like American, like kind of like Southern American, like Black family life, and then one is this like Korean, like Eastern family life where, you know, they're dealing with a completely unique set of circumstances because, like, at least where we are right now, Korea's under this colonial rule with Japan.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like I mean, it's a culture and like time period that I don't really know that much about just cuz like I guess in school, studying the 30s, the only thing you study is America and Europe. I
Yeah,
mean, really everything in
yeah,
school you're mostly studying American Europe, but like especially during this time period, you're
yeah.
just talking about 1930s Great Depression. So I didn't know what's happening in as
And
much.
I feel like the only thing we ever really think about with Japan is like Pearl Harbor and like the fact that we then bombed them, like
Yeah.
Hiroshima. We don't
Yeah.
really talk about um, Japan's role in like the imperialism that was happening because of the like Axis powers. Like we don't really think about that. Um, and like Japan really like for a while there was like really trying to like take over Asia. Like
Yeah.
they were just conquering everybody. They
Yeah.
have really rehabilitated their image.
Yeah. Yeah. They turned a corner,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, at least they're not like currently trying to infiltrate or like be an imperialist country anymore. But
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
like, it's interesting because you can't really say the same for the US. And the
No.
US like kind of pretends it's not imperialistic, but then like still like colonized a bunch of other like islands and stuff. But I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that, to be honest.
Yeah, and like, went into the Middle East and, you know, did all that stuff, which is like kind of the same
Yeah,
thing but under a different name, you
yeah.
know.
It's that promise of democracy. It's like, oh, we have to spread the democracy everywhere, but who knows what's really happening there. Um, but yeah, so it's very interesting. I'm very invested in these characters. I feel a lot for Sunja because she's just such a young woman when we meet her, like a young girl, and like it's like she feels like a girl who always had her head on straight. Um, but then like she kind of like gets the first outside attention she ever had and is just like completely swept up in it, and she had nothing to prepare her for like that type of thing, so it's like kind of heartbreaking, you know.
Yeah, and it's like a textbook definition of grooming.
Yeah,
Like,
And he's so he like
100%. He goes in there and he's like, "Are you single?" But then he's also like, "Oh
I'll
yeah,
be
no,
your
I'll
big
just be like
brother.
an older brother to
Yeah.
you or whatever." And then does like kind of a bait and switch, you know,
And it's like
for just a
even
minute.
though like I guess during the time like an older man taking a younger girl as a wife was probably not as like frowned upon as it is now. Um, sh- I feel like the author Minjin Lee does not like sugarcoat that at all. Like she makes it very clear that he's a creep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and I would even go so far as like she makes it clear that he's like a pedophile because the
Yeah.
way he treats her is like she's a little girl, but
Yeah.
also he's like weirdly sexual with her.
Oh yeah, it's super weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think even for that time period, I like it's less weird then because like, it wouldn't have been unusual for her to like get married at that age.
Yeah.
But it's still, I mean, she still did think about the fact that like, oh wow, he is as old as my mom.
Yeah. And
So
like even the woman in the market was like telling her like that guy's like way too old for you. It's kind of creepy. He keeps staring at you.
yeah.
But yeah, it's very very uncomfortable. Um yeah. And it's also like clear that he just like I don't really understand what his intentions are because he is like I'm going to pay you because you're having the baby and I'll put you in an apartment and things. But it's just like very strange. Like, the energy he gives off is like very predatory.
Yes. Yes, he's just very manipulative.
Hmm. And the
But
weird
I
thing, the
think
thing is like you like the moments where he's talking to her and it just you understand how she gets swept up in it. But like he's very calculating because he tells her all these stories about his life, all these stories about like him growing up and like all this stuff. And he never once mentions that he's married or has kids. So like in that moment, like his intentions were never good. Because if you were honest and you were like just, trying to take care of this girl that you met, she was being attacked by these guys or whatever, then like why wouldn't you bring up that you have a family,
yeah.
He does not have good intentions.
Yeah. And also just the fact that like she made it clear she wasn't interested at the beginning and he just kept trying
Yeah.
is weird.
Yeah.
And like if he wasn't so old, I guess it would be less weird, but it's still
Yeah, because he's much older, and it's also not quite clear how old he is, because he says 34, but the women in the um market were saying he was like 37 or something.
yeah.
And you know, I would assume he's probably trying to sound younger so that she would not feel as weirded out by him. I don't know. He's just a creep.
Yeah.
He's just a
And
creep.
like he definitely like that's also just like what like he made her feel like, "Oh no, I really did like you more than my wife." But like he definitely just has a bunch of women everywhere. He does this like this is just a thing he does.
Yeah.
So
None of
it's
his
just
other
super
mistresses ever got
yeah.
pregnant. Really weird. I don't like
Yeah. And he just feels like he just deserves to do that. Like that's just
it. Yeah. Not a
yeah,
great person.
very bad. I
Um,
was waiting for him to do something or reveal something really terrible. I was like, I have to get to the end of this section because obviously I know she's gonna get pregnant, but I either he's just gonna like not show up after she gets pregnant or he's gonna be married or something. I was like,
yeah.
what's it gonna be?
Yeah, because I was wondering because like the jacket or whatever, the book jacket says like she gets pregnant by someone who can't marry her. And I was assuming like it was like because he was poor. Like you know how like usually
Yeah.
they want the guy to be able to like pay a bride price or something. But like this guy's super rich and I'm like, okay, so what's the problem? And it just like everything was just red flag, red flag, red flag. Like even when she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go pick mushrooms," and he was like, "Oh, I'm going with you." I was like, "Yeah, he thinks he's gonna go get some." Like that was my first thought. And what does he do when they get into the woods?
Yeah.
Like it's creepy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's creepy. There's like very fuzzy lines about the consent there,
Yeah. Like it seems like
especially
she
because she
doesn't
was like
even know
kind of
what's going
known
on.
for it too. So like even if she did consent, it's like, but is she really?
Yeah.
Does she really know what's going on? Like,
Yeah.
it was very gross.
It was
Yeah. I don't know how far you are for like with like what happens after that. So I don't want to like spoil anything, but
I
it's
don't
also a wild time.
I don't know. I think I got to her like telling him she never wants to see him again. I'm not even sure. Let me look. Like I got to like when they it went back to like them talking about the pastor that came to stay with them.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I won't give anything away then about how
Okay.
stuff goes down there. But yeah, more
Awful.
things happen.
Yeah. It's really good. It's like the drama in it is engaging. And like
Yeah.
you feel like you want to know what's happening next. But also like what is good about it to me is that it I think is like making the experiences that women had back then like putting it into like these characters like story or these characters lives. um it does like a really good job of that, like even with the boys, the like Japanese boys that were picking on her when she was trying to walk home from the market. um like though that is like an example of like the real experiences that um Korean women experienced during the time when when Japan was colonizing Korea, um, especially like the whole comfort women thing. I don't know if you know about the comfort women. Do you know
Mhm.
what that is? So essentially, it's like brushed on in the book, but essentially, like they would like kidnap or like take Korean women and like
Oh,
give them
okay.
to
Yeah.
the Japanese soldiers so that they could like
Hmm.
basically have their way with them. And so like they were called comfort women and it went on for like too long. It went on for too long. And um Japan really still hasn't quite apologized for it. And it's just like a whole thing between Korea and Japan today, the whole comfort women thing. But
Mm.
yeah. So the fact that those boys like immediately hypersexualized her, like that's what that was for me. Like it was commentary on the fact that that's what the type of thing that was done to South Korean women or North Korean women too. At the time, just Korea. Um, yeah, it's just horrible stuff. I think
Yeah.
there's a documentary about the comfort women. It was like PBS or one of those things, and it was just eye opening, alarming type of thing because like you know that just historically, like soldiers have a bad reputation for when they're stationed in like other countries to like, how
Yeah.
horribly they treat the women there when
Mhm.
not just like American soldiers, but just soldiers in general. And, you know, the fact that this sort of became an industry is like really horrifying. And it wasn't that long ago. Like in
Mhm.
terms of like historically, that was like fairly recent history. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Such an interesting book. I can't to really dive into it. Man, it's so big. Like it's such a like thick book that it feels like, wow, how are we gonna get through this? But
Yeah, well, listen, I had never read it or heard of it when I suggested it. I was
yeah,
just looking at books and I was like, this looks like it could be interesting. And I'm using an ebook copy, so like I honestly don't have a great concept for how long it is. So
yeah,
I mean, I knew
I,
it was long, but I was like, it always looks longer on the ebook copy because they're little page, my little
yeah, because it's
pages.
only like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it's not gonna be that bad of a read because it's like it looks long, but those little blurbs, like those little chapterlet thingies, are like so interesting that I find myself just like reading through them. So
Yeah,
I
I've been
feel
going
like
really fast through this one.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not too worried, but yeah, sorry, I didn't, know how long it was when
That's
I
okay.
recommended
I
it.
don't mind.
I
I
was
like I like long books, and I really like
yeah,
this epic thing. Um, anytime there's like a story with like multiple generations or something, I'm so interested
mhm,
in that. I don't know why, but it's just really cool to me. I think
yeah,
maybe I admire that as a writer, like creating those whole like family lines. It's really cool.
mhm. This reminds me too a lot of, have you read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn? Oh, did I freeze?
Yes. What was it?
Oh, sorry. Have you read this reminds me a lot of, How A Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
Oh, I
Have you read
haven't
that
read
book?
that. I haven't.
It's it's really good. It's also a very different, like, culture and everything, obviously, because it's in Brooklyn. But, um, uh, but it's this similar, like, very, like, long kind of coming of age sort of epic story, but it's also really
Yeah,
good. So,
sounds good.
mhm.
Well,
It
maybe we should
reminds
put that on the
me
list.
the writing style too is, like, kind of similar.
Yeah,
So,
that's exciting, man. I
yeah.
like that type of thing.
Yeah.
This is amazing. But yeah, I'm
Mm,
so like excited to dive in. This is gonna be fun.
yeah. I could see, like, a movie or miniseries being made of this, like, very easily too.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's what I would like when I was reading it, I was like totally picturing like who would the actors be and like what would it look like on screen. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be really cool to see it adapted.
Yeah. It's very cinematic the way it's written. You can, like, picture everything.
Mhm. Korean culture is very interesting too. I'm wondering how it's going to end up because, of course, there is some going to Japan, and um, there is a large population of Korean people in Japan, which is also like another thing because Japan kind of to this day refuses to give them citizenship. It's the whole thing. Like there's generations
Mm.
of people who have been there for a very long time and like they're just not actual Japanese citizens. It's kind of like weird. Um, so I'm interested to see about that too. Japan's very strange with citizenship
Mm.
though. Like Tara, kind of like that. Like if you move to Japan and you just live there for 40 years, you will never be a citizen. It's just not a thing. I don't know why. Like if you had
Mm.
kids there, it's a weird thing about who born there is a citizen too. I think the mom has to be Japanese. So like
Oh.
if like I went there and had a baby in Japan, my child wouldn't be considered Japanese. But if
Mm.
he was a boy and then he married a Japanese woman and then she had a baby, she had a baby, then that baby would get to be considered Japanese, but he wouldn't be, even though he was born there. So it's
Hmm.
very strange.
That
But
is weird.
yeah, I don't know. I may be getting that a little mixed up, but Japan is very strange about their citizenship.
Mm. Okay.
And it's like a big issue with the people who are Korean descendants of the people who ended up in Korea, in Japan from Korea from this time period when Japan like occupied Korea. So like some
Mm.
people are have been in Japan for that long and they have children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, and I think they're not considered Japanese and they're not considered like Japanese citizens, and it's like a whole thing. But I don't know.
Mm.
But anyway, we'll see how much she ties into that in the book. Like, I think Korean American. I know she lives in America. I don't know if she was from Korea or if she was Korean American, but you know, she must have some great insight into
Yeah.
stuff more than I would. So,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting. I can't wait to read it. It's really exciting. All right. Well, I guess we should log off for today because it's almost 7.
Okie
Um,
dokie.
I had a good time chatting about it.
Yeah, I know there's so much to dive into.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting next week because we'll be more into the book and we'll have so much more to talk about. But yeah, I guess see you next week, same time, same place, I guess.
Woohoo.
Catch you later.
All right. Bye. Have a good week.
Bye, you too. Clicky poos. Catch you guys later. Still talking about Pachinko. Same bad time, same bad channel. Bye.